Today, we're looking at an orange ink by Blackstone Wild Orange. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. There's timestamps down below so that if you want to skip around, you can, but if you got the time, check out the entire video. You can follow me over on Instagram, and don't forget to subscribe. In order to make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into this Sailor, my first pen with a medium fine nib, wrote with it for a day, and used it to take the notes for this video. In order to standardize, I always use Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper in this first writing sample. There will be more writing samples on different papers later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, so it came in a vial like this. And to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub with no feather, spread, halo sheen, fantastic shading all the way through, every single word, constantly, and 12 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine, not as dark as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, fantastic shading the whole way through. It's truly just amazing. 23 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both, do show some color variation, a lot more in the extra fine than the medium, but the shading and the writing is truly standout. Tomoe River. No bleeding, normal Tomoe River ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is a lot lighter than the stub with no feather, spread, halo sheen, no shade, and 19 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the stub with no feather, spread, halo sheen, no shade, and 32 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show no color variation, and we're not getting it here. And Rhodia, with no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is much lighter than the stub with no feather, spread, halo sheen, great shading all the way through this writing. 14 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine, just a little bit lighter than the stub with no feather, spread, halo sheen, still very good shading, nowhere near as nice as it was on the Clairfontaine. 24 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby of the extra fine shows a lot more color variation than the medium does, but they do show it, and we did get it. I agree with Vita. I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see a pink at the bottom. It is at the very beginning stages of forming a line. It pushes its way up and we get a very dark orange with a line of yellow across the top. And that's why this shades so well. Now the one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And the most noticeable difference you see between them is the line of pink at the bottom. That pink has started to get into the filter paper and bond with that paper in only 10 minutes. Although I'm not really expecting much resistance here. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it's handled it very well being re-wet 3 days later. I would feel safe using this in a note-taking situation if I wanted to be able to go back and highlight. Now, water is starting to break it down. On the very right side, or the bottom of the right side, you see white of the paper coming through. Now, that's only 30 seconds of the ink, or the water sitting right on top of the ink. So given a little more water and a little more than 30 seconds, that should be all that it takes. Pen flush, you do start to see the white of the paper very clearly coming through to where if water didn't work for you, pen flush will. Now it only took water for me to get this out of my pen. The 1/3 bleach solution is completely removing it from the paper. I test viscosity or flow with a thing called a tilt test. I'll link it somewhere down below or up in the cards. Now, for the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Blackstone's Wild Orange has a viscosity of 1.44, making this a very wet ink. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average those, and what I found is the average dry time is 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Blackstone's Wild Orange has an average dry time of 21 seconds, so even though it's very wet, its dry time is on the very high side of normal. Instead of finding inks that look like Blackstone's Wild Orange, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I went for a nice green, and I chose Elixir's River Safari. The second writing sample is done on Apica CD, black and red, and Franklin Christoph paper. What we see here is Apica CD notebooks. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, we're getting shading in the stub, and it's very nice up here. The extra fine is a lot lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, great shading all the way through, every word constantly. It never stays at one tone, it's always shifting from darker to lighter. Beautiful. 8 seconds to dry. Now the medium is darker than the extra fine, not as dark as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, and still great shading, although I think this looks its best on this paper. 14 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show good color variation, and we definitely got it in the writing. Black and red notebooks. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, but still great shading. And I wish this wasn't scented. 5 seconds to dry. Medium is about the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, only a couple hints of shading in some lighter spots. That's about it, just like that, a little bit lighter. 8 seconds to dry. Scrubby for the extra fine shows more color variation left to right. Medium doesn't really show any, and that's about how it went in the writing. And Franklin Christoph paper with no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine's quite a bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, a very nice shading all the time. 6 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, the same amount of shading, but it looks significantly better here from the medium with 8 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby for both aren't showing a ton of color variation, but it is definitely got a ton in the writing itself. And that is all that I have for writing samples. So what do I think of Blackstone's Wild Orange? This is a great looking orange tone with a lot of really standout shading. I tend to really enjoy using these different kinds of colors in grading papers, and through this break I'm getting to sit down and not just use the ink to grade papers, but to do a lot of different things with it, and I've been enjoying it all the time. So what nib and pen give the best writing experience with this ink? I find it really doesn't matter. You're going to get a great tone, great color variation. It's always going to have that really wow factor about it. I don't know that a lot of people have gone to try these Blackstone inks other than when the brand first came to people's attention. And inks like this that they have, I think are really worth people going back and taking another look at them. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and if it's your first time here, I'm going to remind you, if you enjoyed it, subscribe. Thanks for watching.